Uh-oh. Oh. Okay, you're... Oh, a few more seconds and the broadcast will be live.
Okay. Where's the camera?
There is no camera.
Oh, it's
You'll
just.
just have this.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I
All
just
right.
want to make sure that's, is that on?
I haven't turned it on yet.
It might already be. Yeah, it's already on.
It is? All set? Okay. Hey, well, welcome to the last session of the day. So if you notice, there's a change in schedule. If you're looking at the paper, agenda that you all have. I'm not Crystal and I'm not Vince. I'm Christopher Poehlmann. I'm one of the 4 tribal liaisons for FEMA Region 9. We work out of our office in Oakland, but I don't spend a lot of time there. I'm usually on the road. So I'm glad to be here with you today. As I said, I'm humbled to be here with so many great people. My thoughts before I get started, I've also heard from some really great breakout sessions that I've been sitting in the audience with the Climate Science Alliance, amazing work that they're doing. Shasta from Paula, Band of Mission Indians, did a great explanation of tribal data sovereignty and research protocols, which I thought was really something important and important for you to really protect your information that you don't always have to share. And then Cindy Smallwood with Hamal Indian Village explained the great work being done with her AIR work group. And she is welcoming new members. So, and also my thoughts today are those of us who have lost friends and have passed on. I had the honor to know Chairman Rupert Steele from the Confederated Tribes of Goshute Reservation, and he's missed. But his lessons of tribal history and culture will always be with me. So anyway, let's get started. Next slide, please. So just a little overview here, the understanding the tribal declaration process. This is something that is unique to tribes, that tribes can go direct to FEMA rather than going as a sub-applicant to the state. So there are some changes that are coming on. So I'll go through this as quickly as possible, but keep in mind that you will get this presentation after the conference, so you can look at it. And you can always call me if you have any questions. But we're also going to talk about how tribal environmental programs really affect emergency management activities. And also we want to understand ways in which we can work together to reach common goals. Next slide, please. So the background to how tribes can go directly to FEMA, it goes all the way back to 2013 with the Sandy Recovery Act. This was something that was put in place by the Obama administration, and Indian tribal governments have the option now to go either direct to FEMA or to go as a sub-applicant to the state. And this was not an option prior to 2013. So it's a fairly new program when we talk about how old some of these federal programs are. But the tribe has the, I'll go through all the processes here, but I did want to just point out this is down below there is quite a while ago, but that's the Hoopa Valley tribe that received a presidential declaration, one of the first in 2013, and they just received another one this year, which we're up there helping any way we can. So next slide, please. So the implementation of the program when it was put in was really just started out with a very bare bones program, but we decided what the most important thing to do is to put together pilot guidance. We didn't want to just put, this is the way it's going to be for tribes rather than getting a lot of input from the tribes. And that's why it's still not a codified law. It's what's called a pilot guidance. So since 2013, we started that. And then in 2017, we put out our first pilot guidance, which is what we're working on today. Next slide, please. So the input that we received, as you can see, there's been 3 rounds. And actually, this isn't quite up to date because just last year, we had a 4th round where we brought several tribal individuals to Anniston, Alabama, one of our campuses for Emergency Management Institute, and sat down with them to update it as quickly as much as we could for 2023, rather than when you haven't looked at something since 2017, it's time to look at it again. So we're getting very close to putting out our final guidance, but we wanted to make sure that we knew what the tribes were thinking rather than just go ahead and put it out there. So next slide, please. So this was the publication of the final pilot guidance, as I said, and we've been using this since 2017. There's, as I said, mentioned earlier, all of this will be, you'll get this at the end of the program, so you'll be able to click on that and read to your heart's content. Or if you have trouble sleeping, that's a really good thing to read. So it's a little dense. So, but let's go on to the next slide. So this is some of the, since 2022 and 2023, these are all tribes in our region that have received a presidential direct tribal declaration. So as you can see, some of these are very recent. For Tropical Storm Hillary, the La Jolla Band, as well as Agua Caliente Band. Agua Caliente Band actually was approved by the president literally days ago. So I wanted to give you as much information as I could up to date here. For those of you that may not know, the state of California also requested a presidential declaration for Hurricane Hillary, but that has not been signed yet. So we have several tribes that are interested in that because they'd like to be sub-applicants to the state. So, but as of today, we haven't heard from the president on that. So next slide, please. So this is one of the first things that we recommend you do when you're thinking about a tribal declaration and possibly going direct to FEMA. Activate your emergency plan. And but keep in mind, and this is something that is a kind of a myth out there, this doesn't mean that you are not going to get a tribal presidential declaration if you do not activate your plan, but it is recommended. So it makes it a little bit easier. Keep in mind that in order for the president to sign this thing, we have to give him all the information that he needs and give him as many reasons as possible to say yes. So if this is one of the things that you've accomplished, then we'll put it into the documents that end up on his desk. So next slide. So this is one of the things you should know about too. There's also an opportunity to ask for an emergency declaration. Keep in mind though that tribes have the right to ask for this, but it's very rare for a tribe to get it. This is usually reserved for, like, say, Florida, when they know there's a hurricane that's going to hit them in a couple of days, and they'll ask for an emergency dec before the disaster hits. So the only emergency declaration that has been granted for tribes was for COVID-19. That's the only one I know of anyway. So it's very rare to have it. But next slide. So this is the other option as we're talking about here, is this is a major disaster declaration is what the legal term is when a tribe will ask for this. But one of the big thing that's you really is very important to remember is that your first step should be to reach out to your state counterparts first, and all of the other, all of the assets that the tribe has and everything. FEMA doesn't really get involved until all of those have exceeded the capacity of the state or the tribe. So just be aware of that. I'm lucky enough in the audience today, we've got Gabe, who's from Cal OES, Tribal Liaison, and he and I worked really closely when there's a tribe that we have heard it might be in peril or may need some additional help. So keep in mind that that should be your first line to go to the state, and then we are always working with the state. Next slide. So this is a slide I put together. I thought it was important to understand what an emergency versus major disaster declaration, and the way it works is that in an emergency, federal assistance supplements all of these state, local, and tribal efforts to save lives, protect property. And as you can see down there, emergency assistance is generally limited to $5 million, and that includes states. So just to be aware of that. Now, a major disaster declaration is very different, where it's actually, you're talking about damage, loss, hardship, suffering, especially loss of life. That can really make things work a lot faster in Washington, D.C., which doesn't always work that fast, as we all know. So next slide. So this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about too. If I get into any acronyms that you're going to see here, and there will be some in here, keep in mind that FEMA's name actually is an acronym. So that's probably why we have so many. That's all we do, is acronym all day, all the time. It's Federal Emergency Management Agency, but everyone knows it as FEMA. So, but this is what's really important when you're talking about public assistance. Most tribal declarations are public assistance, not individual assistance, which we'll get into a little bit later. But keep in mind also that there is a 75% federal and 25% non-federal. So that would mean that the tribal nation would be responsible for 25% of anything to do with public assistance. Next slide, please. And then minimum damage amount is $250,000. Now, in our work group that we had last year, there were several tribes that felt that it should be reduced. And so that is being considered. So there's, but it's nothing that I can talk about today. But there's a lot of good input that the team received, especially from smaller tribes, that it's really hard sometimes to get to that level of 250,000. Because keep in mind, it's $250,000 that is not covered by insurance or some other type of thing that might cover that cost. And that's the minimum amount. And like I said, just be aware that as we're writing up the paperwork with all of your input, of course, is that you have to make sure that it's exceeding the government's capacity, and it would warrant a disaster declaration. So next slide, please. So this is individual assistance. It's unusual for tribe to get individual assistance, mostly because of the fact that it usually takes a lot of damaged homes and loss in order to get that. So one of the things, this is also 75% and 25%. In this one, the president is not authorized to adjust it. Now, I think I made one error I want to correct right now. On public assistance, the president is authorized to adjust it. He can adjust it all the way to 100% federal cost share, but that's only on public assistance. So if I If I said that incorrectly, I apologize. But on public assistance, it's rather individual assistance, it's totally different. He cannot adjust it. So the difference, probably the best way to look at it is that public assistance is publicly owned land and property, as well as all the infrastructure that the tribe owns. Individual assistance is for the individual. In other words, if there's an individual assistance loss, for instance, like the fires that we had where we had several thousand homes that were lost, that was all done on individual assistance. So each individual would be worked with individually, one by one, with FEMA. So that's how the two programs really are different. So next slide. So this is one of the things that is interesting about a tribal individual assistance program. The tribe has the opportunity, unlike any other entity, to decide who is going to be eligible for individual assistance. Enrolled tribal members, they can also say that all descendants, widows, widowers, as well as the tribe even has the opportunity to say all employees of the tribe should get individual assistance. That is a very unique thing about a tribal declaration rather than a state declaration, because the state, it's everyone in the state or in the county that is being declared for individual assistance. But the tribe has this very unique thing that they can do. And they can even offer it to other people in the county if they wish to. Because if you think about the people that are working for the tribe, they may be driving in from a different county. So that way they're affected as much as anybody, because there's a good chance that the tribal enterprise they're working with, they may have lost their job temporarily. So that's the reason for that. But next slide, please. So hazard mitigation is something that most declarations come with, even public assistance declaration. What this is that they will add up all of the money that was spent on public assistance, and then 15% of that is put towards mitigation. That's the 404 program is what it's called. Now, within public assistance, there's also what's called 406 mitigation. And that means that rather than building the damaged area right back to exactly the way it was before, there's an opportunity to bring it up to a higher standard. A good example of that would be like if you had a culvert that was a 12-inch culvert, it wasn't taking the water, it got washed out, you could upgrade it to a 24-inch culvert. And there's money that is put aside for that. So that's where mitigation comes in. And once again, this is one of the ones that the president is not able to adjust. 75% federal, 25% non-federal. Next slide, please. So this is the process that goes through, and this is what the two tribes I mentioned earlier just went through. And I am very involved with this from the very beginning. We'll get we'll talk to the tribe when they're usually talking to the state. And then if the tribe decides to go directly to FEMA, then the state will sit back, and then we'll take over from there, and they'll deal directly with just FEMA. And then the incident happens. The tribe does its first initial damage assessment, and then the tribe and the state will do public preliminary damage assessments, unless the state has not already gotten involved with the tribe and they decide to go directly to FEMA. Then FEMA and the tribe and who they choose to invite will come to the preliminary damage assessments. And then we'll go through several meetings with the tribe will make the recommendation to the president, and then the president determines what it is. And it has to be done within 30 days of the incident. So that's something that's really important to remember too. Next slide, please. So this is the tribal initial damage assessment. This is kind of the things that we'll go through on all of this. We'll be talking to everybody that is involved in this, but it's really important to understand that it really is tribally run. The tribe decides how many people they want to get involved with the preliminary damage assessments and go through that. But this is the initial damage estimate assessment, and this is something also that I'll defer to Gabe on this, but I believe that the state requires this also. Is that correct? Okay. Next slide. So this is when we really get involved in it, and this is the joint preliminary damage assessment, which is the tribe and FEMA getting together to it. I would say that this is one of the things that sometimes can really bog things down and make it difficult because of the fact that many tribal nations don't have a huge staff to be able to be running around and taking pictures, trying to assess what the damage is and everything. So it makes it difficult to get the preliminary damage assessment that the tribe does on their own. So when we finally get out there with us and the tribe, we almost need to almost do it all over again because of the fact that we want to make sure that everything's covered. The big thing for us as tribal liaisons, but also from FEMA in general, is we want to make sure that the tribe has the very best chance of getting the president to sign. And so the more information we can put in the documents that we send to Washington, D.C., the better, is what it is. So next slide. So this is the declaration request. As I said, it's done, put in within 30 days after the incident. The important thing that we always go into is the attorneys get involved pretty quickly because we want to make sure that appropriate action under tribal law has been taken in and the tribal emergency plan was executed. That's one of the things that the attorneys are going to ask almost immediately. And then the estimation of amount of severity of damage, losses in the public and the private sector, which is what I said, the public assistance or individual assistance. So next slide. So once again, this is more information that you need in order to do the declaration request. So it's not unusual to have several calls from several different FEMA entities because what they're doing is they're filling out their portion of the paperwork. Some of these documents that go back to Washington, D.C. can be up to 50 pages long. So, but if they're not that way, and if there isn't enough detail, there's less of a chance that it's going to be approved. But keep in mind that the only person that approves it is the president. So we have to work with his people and get what he wants in the document. So sometimes there may be a request from us saying, hey, we really need to know a little bit more about this particular building. And they'll, the answer might be, well, we gave you pictures and we told you what it was all about, but it might be something that's sensitive to what we know they're looking for. So just so you know, that happens sometimes. So next slide, please. So this is the PA criteria, as you can see. Insurance is a very big thing here. I don't think myself, if I would have to find my insurance and try to figure out exactly what's covered on my own house, So when you're talking about multiple buildings and multiple different things that you have in the infrastructure, sometimes it's hard to get that information. But unless we know whether it's insured or not, it can't really move forward. And that's one of the things that is probably one of the most difficult things that a lot of tribal nations run into. And then, as I said, you will be asked some of this information like demographics and other relevant information. So next slide. And this is for individual assistance criteria. This is, it's a very different program than public assistance. So I can certainly probably go on for 2 hours about this, but I'll share, I'll spare you that. But I can give you more information if you're interested. Next slide. And then declaration, a decision report support is really important. And we're going to ask a lot of questions about this. And you may want to go up until the very time when we're about to send the request to the president. The tribe can decide to go as a sub-applicant to the state. It's not, we're never going to tell any tribe just to go one way or the other. To give you, what we're here to do is give you the options that you have. And I know that the state is very interested in speaking about what your options are too. So there's never been an issue with FEMA and the state working together. And it's what the most important thing to us is to make sure that you're doing what's best for your tribe. So we'll give you all your options, but the decision is yours. So next slide, please. So these are the required plans that are one of the big hurdles that happen sometimes is a tribal hazard mitigation plan. It you may, if you don't have one, unfortunately, you can request a declaration, but you have 30 days to put it together, which is nearly impossible. Yeah. Yeah. Next slide, please. And then the president makes his determination. And the tribal government has 30 days from the date of denial to appeal the decision if the president decides to not approve it. Next slide. So this is another thing I wanted to let you know that this just broke the beginning of this month. There's a tribal set aside of $50 million for under the BRIC program. This is for another way of getting some funding. And we actually have a great person that's working down here in Southern California that can help you with this. If you want his name is Jesse Johnson, and he formerly worked for a tribe. So he's a great guy to work with. Next slide. And then this is also the hazard mitigation grant program, which I mentioned earlier. Next slide. And these are the mitigation planning requirements. As I said, you can read this at your leisure. Next slide. And then post-declaration activities, these are the things after it is a declaration from the president. The president agrees that the tribe should get a presidential declaration. Then there's quite a few things that need to be done after that. And that's what these two tribes that I mentioned earlier are doing right now. They're gathering all that information that's required. So next slide. And this is one thing that I want to make clear about that I wasn't too clear about before, but keep in mind that the tribe does have the opportunity to request less of a cost share, 90-10 instead of 75-25, but it's usually done after the disaster has been declared and approved by the president. Then down the road, you can file the paperwork to request this. But once again, the president has to approve it. So next slide. And one thing I did want to let you know is that we actually do have a FEMA tribal strategy. We've never had one before. So this is one of the goal 2 of this is lead the whole community in climate resilience. So this is a big thing that's going to make it easier also for grants. And once again, if you wanted to talk to Jesse about that, there's a lot of climate resilient projects that are being put in and being approved. So that's something you may want to think about doing. So next slide. So one of the things that's really important to know is that especially on large public assistance projects where there's a lot of earth moving and stuff like that, FEMA gets very involved with our, our environmental and historical program staff. Unfortunately, they're not here today, or they'll be standing up here so they could talk about what they do. But they work very closely with the tribes to make sure that if there is any ground disturbance, that there isn't going to be any issues with it. So that's something that we try to work with really closely. And then next slide. So this is one of the things I have a question for you, okay? And how can we work together? Because the thing is that we really, we have 4 tribal liaisons right now. One of them is going to be leaving and going to a different agency. So we're down to 3 tribal liaisons. We're going to be hiring 4 more, plus filling the other position that we lost. But we're trying to do as much as we can to make sure that the tribes have a seat at the table. I was telling my friend earlier about how we have a new person in charge of our tribal program, and we all got together in Washington, D.C., and the first thing she gave us was a coffee cup. And on the coffee cup, it says, "What about the tribes?" And he goes, "Whenever you're at a Zoom meeting, I want you drinking something and put it there in front of your camera." So we all have those mugs. But I thought that was pretty clever. So anyway, and next slide, please. So this is us. That's me. And on the far right, your left, and Pamela Joe is in the front there. She's a Navajo Nation enrolled member, and behind her is Crystal Harjo, and right in the middle is Vince. So I wanted you to have some pictures of the people that weren't here today. So anyway, and the person that's right in front there in the green is our supervisor. Her name is Christine Borgognoni. So next slide. So that's all I've got. This is our contact information. Once again, you'll be getting this after the program, but I'll be glad to take some questions if we have time. Are we out of time? No?
No, you got time.
Okay. Okay.
A couple things. So my observation the last few years like I talked about a flood with a tribe,
Right.
and the PDA, and what I see happening often is tribal leadership are invited to the PDA or similar type things that need to get done,
Right.
but they're unqualified.
Mhm.
And they're not bringing their emergency manager.
Right.
They don't even know that they have an emergency operations plan, hazard mitigation plan, existing plans. They don't know the process.
Right.
But they think that some of them feel that it's their job as leadership to do this, but they should know that they have people there that should support them. That way they don't have to revisit a PDA because it was done improperly, or they complain later about things not being done, and that happens
Sure.
quite often. And it kind of goes to the other thing, which the hazard mitigation plan. A lot of tribes have expired hazard mitigation plans.
Yep.
And a lot of things are in there still, but they expired. But that makes it easier for them to revisit it. But again, a lot of leadership doesn't know they have existing plans,
Mhm.
and that because the hazard mitigation plan expired, they went in with the county. And
Right.
so they've been communicating with the local emergency planning committee, and they don't even know that relationship exists, and they're in the county plan, and then it slows the process up. So there's got to be a better way to get leadership or communicate with leadership. Maybe have like a checklist for leadership. Did you check this? Did you know this? And then they
Right.
can check internally within their people and realize, oh shoot, we already have something kind of set up and an agreement made. Because I see that happens.
Oh yeah. No, I agree with you. It's a training, not just for emergency managers and tribal staff, but leadership is huge. We actually have a program in our tribal program with the Emergency Management Institute called Emergency Management for Tribal Leaders. And it's only a 4-hour course. So we can go in one day and teach the course, and they've got because it's so hard to get tribal council together for a 3 or 4 day training. I mean, it's nearly impossible, which is why this was created in the first place. But I will tell you a great story about this is that there was a tribe down here in Southern California. Tribal council was badgered by their emergency manager, says, you've got to take this class. They scheduled it, and all tribal council showed up, including the chairman. And afterwards, they had that aha moment and actually changed the way that they worked with the emergency manager and created a position for that person. So that was a big win for not only the tribe, but for us, because then we had that great person we were working with. So, and this is free of charge to any tribe. And Pamela, who also works in California, and I will teach the class. We've actually qualified to teach the class, so we can come out. And once again, there's no charge to it. But there's also 4 other classes that are in the tribal curriculum that we also can teach. And this is either done on our campus in Maryland or in Anniston, Alabama. And there's no charge for the tribes either to fly out there. We'll fly you out there, we'll feed you, and for 4 days. And yeah, come on down, be great. Keep in mind too that we also have Tribal Training Week is coming up, and that was just announced. I'll give you the dates on that. But Tribal Training Week is this is the 9th annual one that's going to be in Anniston, Alabama on March 9th through 16th. And typically we get 300 to 350 tribal citizens from all over the country that come there. It's well worthwhile to go. And once again, there's no charge at all for it.
We had a question come in the chat too from Suzanne Marr. Hi, Suzanne. Is it possible to have the training available online too for leadership, even acknowledging that it's great to be in person?
They're working on that. I can say that, but unfortunately, there's a lot of online classes that we have, but that's not one of them.
Okay.
Not yet anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you please let folks know how they can sign up for the trainings back east?
Yeah, that's the Emergency Management Institute, and I have I can forward that information to whoever wants it. If I forward it to you, can you send it out, or how would that work? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John Sterling, Yavapai Prescott Tribe. I've been down to Anniston twice now, and I'm going again in March.
Great.
And this is my shameless plug for anybody that's in here. If you've never been there, it is more than worth what you will pay. And you will pay nothing, but it is more than what you would have to pay, because they fly you there, they feed you, but the training is as good as it gets. And it is the most realistic training that you will get on top of it. And I think the biggest thing we have heard at that big session they had last year, the one in the evening, was how do we get tribal leaders involved? And that's the biggest thing that came out of that. Was there was more than probably, I don't know how many comments. Everybody was like, we got to get our leaders involved, but how do we get them here? And it's a solid, depending on what track you're on, it's a solid 10 days, 9-10 days, but it's more than worth it. You can't. I'll go back again and again as long as I'm around.
Oh, that's great. No, I appreciate the plug too, because I've been to 2, and it's actually March 9th through 16th. So it's well worthwhile.
How you doing? Alvina from Los Coyotes, a council member. I feel like you probably can't get all 5 or 7 members, but I can at least get you more than half.
Okay.
So once I bring this back, now that I'm finally coming out to more things and networking again, then I can get at least 4 of them to come.
Yeah, that's
Because it's going to
definitely,
benefit us even more as a tribal entity, you know, and the job that we do as leaders for our tribal members. So I definitely will work on that.
oh, I appreciate it. No, and we'll be there. No problem. We have a wide open schedule right now. And it's all depends on funding. Of course, you know, our federal funding is ending on November 18th. So, but I think they'll get it together and we'll be able to have a fully funded year, hopefully. But anyway, yeah, happy to help any way we can. And there's also a lot of online courses that people can take. And we're doing more and more work on trying to get people that work for tribes or tribal members to become trainers. And we'll train you too. That's all free also. So we do have an online program right now where you can take that training to become a trainer. So that's another thing that I can send you out. Yeah. Hi, Gabe.
Hi there, Gabe Kearney with Cal OES Office of Tribal Coordination. If you go to csti.org, we also have a lot of classes that are available free of charge. A lot of them do take place here in Southern California. And so you can create an account on there and find out when we have classes coming available. Again, that's csti.org. That's our learning management system. And there's a lot of training opportunities there. And again, we really are trying to get as many folks trained as possible. And I believe we are offering the training certification class for folks to become trainers through our organization as well. So there's a lot of opportunities there in the next year.
Well, thanks a lot, Gabe. I appreciate it. What was the acronym again? CSTI? Is that what it was? CSTI. Yeah. Oh, California State Training.
It's the California Specialized Training Institute, and it's the Cal OES version of the Emergency Management Institute in Maryland. It's our in-state version of that.
There's also a tribe that's very active with training, and that's the Blue Lake Rancheria. You should definitely check out what they have too. They don't usually offer a no cost to go up there, but they do offer some great training. So anyway, is there any other questions or anything I can offer you? I know this was kind of dense and I went through it pretty quickly, but as I said, it's been really beneficial for a lot of tribes, especially in California, to go direct to FEMA. There was a situation where there was little or no chance that the state was going to get a declaration because there wasn't enough damage. But tribes were able to come in and go, well, I have this damage. Can you pay for it? And as it turned out, we could. So, and I mentioned earlier that there's still on the table the declaration request for Tropical Storm Hillary from the state of California. And if the state of California does get that declaration from President Biden, then of course, tribes that are in those counties would possibly be eligible also. Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate you all being here.
Sorry, just a reminder of a plug. Tonight is the karaoke costume contest next door, yeah, at 6:30.